This conference will now be recorded.
And everybody's doing such an awesome job of muting when they join. So thank you so much for, I don't know, doing that. Please feel free to use your cameras, though. It's great to see everybody's faces. Yeah, and we're going to start here shortly, or whenever you're ready, Tom.
Are we ready?
I
It's
think we're
three
ready.
after.
We're getting a great crowd here. It's awesome. So
Okay, outstanding. Well, we'll get started. Thank you, Leah. So welcome everyone to the 2025 mid-year meeting for the Western Regional Panel of Aquatic Nuisance Species of the Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force. My name is Tom Wolf. I am currently the Western Regional Panel Chair. In my day job, I am the AIS Bureau Chief for the state of Montana. To start, I'd like to recognize our executive committee for their leadership and guidance for the panel. First off, Robert Walters from Colorado Parks and Wildlife. He is currently our vice chair. Dennis Zavaglio, Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, our previous chair. Blaine Parker, Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. Stephen Phillips, Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission. Barack Shamai, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Region 2. Vanessa Salazar, Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks. Josh Leonard, Wyoming Game and Fish Department. And John Welchschlager, National Park Service. And a special thank you to Leah Elwell, our WRP panel coordinator. We couldn't do it without you, Leah. This is a great group of people that are doing great things to protect the West from aquatic invasive species. I would also like to recognize all of our federal partners and the great work that they do to address aquatic invasive species and the AIS issue. In particular, I'd like to recognize Susan Pasco with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Hillary Smith with the Department of Interior for their support of panels and Western AIS efforts. So addressing aquatic invasive species issues isn't getting any easier. We are fortunate to have such a dedicated and passionate group through WRP to share ideas, coordinate efforts, identify needs, develop protocols, develop standards, develop strategies, and generally be a support network to help each other address AIS challenges. I hope you all find today's material informative, and please share with us ideas and opportunities on how Western Regional Panel can better support AIS prevention, early detection, outreach, rapid response, and coordination now and into the future. Thank you all for joining us today. And we'll start off the conversation today with plans for our meeting in Kansas, and our good friends in Kansas will be hosting the panel this year. I'll turn it over to our Kansas people. Whoever would like to go first.
Yeah, we're excited to host a truly unique conference later this year, where we're both going to have the Western Regional Panel and the Mississippi River Basin Panel for a joint meeting, and that's going to be September 17th through the 19th. It's going to be hosted in downtown Lawrence, Kansas, which is home of Kansas University. It's a vibrant college town, and it's a pretty unique area. The hotel is located right off the Kansas River, where we do a majority of our invasive carp removal work. So we're excited to share that with you, and we hope you guys stick around for the field trip on Friday, September 19th, where we're going to be visiting a nearby lake that has been recently infested with zebra mussels, and hear about how that's impacted the community there. And then you'll also have the opportunity to witness firsthand invasive carp in the Kansas River. We're planning to take you guys out on the boat and do some electrofishing. So yeah, we hope to see you there.
awesome, Vanessa. I have a few other additions related to the annual meeting. I did put out an opportunity for folks to book their hotel room, and if you know you can make it there, so we have accommodations ready to go. I'm going to put a few links related to the meeting here in the chat once I finish talking. One of the things I did want to mention as well, Lawrence is about 50 miles, I believe, from Kansas City Airport, which if you're flying, that's going to be the airport you're going to come into likely. So I really want to encourage people to coordinate with colleagues as you come in, carpool as you can. I'm going to be sharing some resources for, using shuttle services, etc. But, bring those costs down and you share a ride with friends when you guys come in. So just carpool, carpool. And then next, the abstracts. So I am going to be putting a link in the chat for if you have a presentation, information that you want to share, please submit your idea to the planning team. That will be open for, I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks, accepting abstract ideas. Any, new information, new technology, anything that would be relevant to, of course, the WRP audience, but also the larger Mississippi River Basin audience as well. We do realize that there is, obvious uncertainty related to federal, whether travel or participation. And so even as a federal employee, if you're interested in submitting an abstract, just do your best in terms of, guessing whether it, participation would be in person or not. Yeah, just submit your information and we'll go from there. So let's see. The other thing I do want to just lastly mention in terms of agenda, it'll be very similar to past years where, lots of presentations, incorporating discussion, but we're kind of looking at ways of modifying how we do the business meeting. So not determined yet, but the planning team, which is big because we have both of these two panels working on this together, are talking about different ways to make it all work. So I look forward to seeing many of you there. Reach out if you have questions about attending, presenting, etc. So, and as I mentioned, I'm going to put stuff in the chat here momentarily. So that's all we have there for annual meeting.
Thank you, Vanessa and Leah. And I'm really looking forward to that tour. I've never had an invasive silver carp in my hands, so I'm looking forward to some fish slime on that tour. Okay, thank you very much. The next part of the agenda is committee updates, and that starts with Chris Yanni, California Lands Commission, and he chairs our coastal committee. Chris, welcome.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so we don't have a lot of updates on committee actions, but what we wanted to do was mention that we're going to be having we have had a change in leadership within the committee. So I've been in the role of the chair for about 7 years now, and the last couple with Christine Moffett as a co-chair. And thanks to Christine for that, for all the work that she's done during those years to help move the committee actions along. But Amanda Newsom from the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife agreed to take on the role. And so we officially mentioned that at our last coastal committee meeting and talked about the next year meeting frequency, meeting topics. So we're trying to plan for having really useful discussions over the next several months. And so maybe now I'll just turn it over to Amanda, the new chair, to talk about her vision for the commission, for the coastal committee, and maybe some of the topics that we're going to be talking about and discussing over the next half a year or so. And maybe just an advertisement out there for anybody that is not a member of the coastal committee, and if you're interested in any of these discussions, to let us know, and you can easily join the committee. So, Amanda.
Thanks, Chris. My name is Amanda Newsom. I am the lead for the Ballast Water and Biofouling Unit in the Aquatic Invasive Species Division at the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. I've been with this unit for about 10 years, and I've worked with Chris for longer than that, and am really excited to be more involved with WRP. I think this is a body with this is a body with such far-reaching impact and such diverse expertise. The Coastal Committee, of course, covers everything that is WRP related within the coastal states, particularly the Pacific states, were really active at the last meeting. My vision going forward is primarily to understand where the committee has been in terms of their interests and where we can move forward. There's a lot that, not surprisingly, I think for every committee, there's always kind of a wish list of topics and priorities. And I think this is a really good time for us to go back over them. One of the places where I see a nexus right now for a lot of the committee's highest concerns are with mobile marine infrastructure. We had a presentation on the proposed superport on the southern coast of Oregon, and all of the dredging and mobile infrastructure and barges that would be coming in if that plan were to go forward. Of course, with any proposed port activities, there's mobile marine infrastructure, and any kind of dredging, there's going to be that. So I'm seeing that as a potential nexus for us. But what I'm going to be doing in the next few weeks is putting out an interest survey. Sounds like the committee would like to meet every other month and just get our priority list agreed upon so that we can move forward. Yeah, so just thank you very much, Chris, for tapping me for this opportunity. Really excited to work with the Coastal Committee and with WRP.
Thank you, Amanda and Chris. It's exciting changes with the Coastal Committee, so appreciate your efforts on that. Next up is Kate Duquette with Arizona Game and Fish to give us an update on the Field Sampling and Monitoring Committee. Take it away, Kate.
Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in America. So we started working on redoing the Dracinid sampling manual that was put together. It was finalized in 2020, but there was many years of work on that prior to it. And we've been working on it for the last over a year or so, trying to update it to make it more inclusive of other invasive species. So this would basically be a basic document of common sampling methods for detecting aquatic invasive species, whether it's plankton or doing substrates, crayfish trapping. We'll touch very briefly on environmental DNA just as an overview, because that is a huge lift if someone wanted to do an eDNA manual, but this would at least be a document that someone could refer to later on, as these are the most commonly used methods that we all use. Different states and agencies have been, we've gotten their sampling protocols, and we'll be including those type documents in there, more on the higher level of things. But I expect to have a draft to the state coordinators by the end of June. So to give them the first few weeks in July, once the fiscal year rolls over, to review. May and June are very busy for states. So I want to make sure people have ample time to review it. And then once the coordinators come back with it, we'll send it on to the executive committee once those edits have been included. If anyone would like to participate, please let me know. Or if you would like to be a reviewer, please reach out.
Thank you, Kate. Do you think we'll have a working close draft to completion by the panel meeting, if all goes well?
Yes.
Outstanding. Appreciate you driving that bus. Great, thank you, Kate. Next up, John Wolschlager, National Park Service, with a membership and a communication committee update. Thanks, John.
Sorry, I'm having. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, my mic. My mic is open. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, John. Yep.
Oh, okay, good.
Yep. We gotcha.
Sorry, I had trouble finding my mouse cursor there on all my monitors. Yeah, the Membership and Communications Committee, as most folks may know, but maybe not everybody, is responsible for the bylaws and revisions to the bylaws. This is the year that we make changes to those. A lot of the meetings we've had in recent times, including the one time we've met since the annual meeting, have been focused on matters related to tribal membership. We're trying to bring that into alignment with the membership requirements and whatnot for state and federal members. So we're working on draft language for that. We're pretty close. We hope to have that out for review by the entire panel well in advance of the annual meeting. We're also combing the bylaws for any other things we may want to make changes to, and that would be included in whatever goes out to the entire panel for review. So I think that's where we are right now.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that update and your leadership on that committee. Next up is Sarah Rickliff, Invasive Species Action Network. She chairs the Outreach and Education Committee.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so I'm a new face in this role. Monica McGarity with TPWD was the chair previous. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank her for her time and effort and dedication over the past years. And as Monica reported at the annual meeting, we have worked on every objective listed in QZAP 2.0. So right now what we're doing is discussing our new objectives that we'd like to move forward with, or if there's anything that we'd like to revisit that's been worked on in the past. And so if anybody would like to join in on the Education and Outreach Committee, I invite you to shoot me an email and I'll get you added. Our next meeting will be in April, date to be determined. But the last thing that I'd like to say is we have an upcoming webinar with Elizabeth Brown. She's put together social media guidelines, and that webinar will be April 15th at 1 o'clock Mountain Time. So I'll throw the registration link in the chat. It's free to attend, but there's just a registration. So that's all I had.
Thank you, Sarah. And yeah, Monica was chair of that committee for a long time and did an outstanding job. Great to have you on, Sarah, to take the reins again. And that committee, it is important to emphasize again the fact that they did go through all of the QZAP items. I mean, it was a really focused effort to address each one of those points, which is outstanding. Great work, Outreach and Education Committee. Next up, we have Josh Wright with Wyoming Game and Fish Department. He is going to give us an update on the Watercraft Inspection and Decontamination Think Tank. Take it away, Josh.
Thanks. I'm Josh Wright. So Robert has passed the torch down to me and Chris Killian as the co-chairs for the Decon Think Tank now. First of all, we'd like to thank Robert for all of his hard work and running this committee. I don't know how he did it on his own, but we'll see how we can do it with two of us. We had one of our meetings earlier this month and talked about a bunch of different subjects that we would like to cover with the Decon Think Tank. Because most of our group is heavy into decontaminations and stuff, we won't have another meeting till September or October, just due to everybody's busyness and it's hard for us to get together as a committee again. But some of the subjects we've talked about is we're going to go through some of the operating procedures that Utah has provided for us for the dip tanks. We're going to go through some of the on-demand systems and the portability and that kind of thing, because that kind of seems the direction a lot of people are going for decontamination is the on-demand systems and or dip tanks. Yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. If you are interested in becoming a part of our committee, you can email me or Chris. And yeah, that's it for today. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate you taking the reins of the think tank, and I echo the question on how Robert Walters was able to get all that he got done. I mean, that was an amazing lift with an amazing group through the think tank. So well done, team think tank. I didn't mention it before, but as we go along, we're definitely ahead of schedule. Please put questions or comments in the chat as we go, and we can work on those once we get through our regular agenda if we have time. But this is a meeting to provide information to the panel, but also to get feedback and input from the panel as well. So I apologize I didn't throw that out there already. But please, if you have ideas, please share them, or concerns or considerations or just fun updates. Appreciate that. Okay, next up is our very own Stephen Phillips from Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission. He is going to provide an update on current aquatic invasive species legislation. Take it away, Stephen.
Hang on. Let's see. How's that look?
Looks good.
Okay, good. Hi, folks. This is your AIS legislative report. It's not very long. So let's look at last year. Couple of bills passed out that you may be aware of. Water Resources Development Act of 2024 was passed. It was signed into law by President Biden in January. The one thing big thing that happened in WRDA 2024 was the cost share that the states currently have is 50-50. This changes the cost share for watercraft inspection and rapid response to 65-35. And the question we have for the Corps right now, and this will be answered in the coming months, will monitoring and contingency planning remain at 50-50, or do we need to go back into WRDA 2026 and make that adjustment? So anyway, good news that we've got the 35% on watercraft inspection. That's going to be a big savings. The other big bill that passed out was the Explore Act, Expanding Public Lands Outdoor Recreation Experiences Act by Westerman and, God rest his soul, Grillo from Arizona, who recently passed away. This bill has gives federal land management agencies authorization to carry out inspections and decontamination of vessels entering or leaving their jurisdiction. And it also establishes a 75-25 competitive grant program to provide financial assistance to partners to conduct inspections and decontaminations of vessels operating in reclamation projects. And this is subject to appropriations. And that bill was signed by President Biden in January. Some of the bills that have been introduced in the 119th Congress, the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative of 2025. This one is, I know this is a Western Regional Panel meeting, but this is a big bill because the initiative is focused on the spread of invasive carp. Hawaii Invasive Species Protection Act. I included this because Hawaii is now a member state of the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission. So we have 6 states. And this particular bill, the Invasive Species Protection Act, requires APHIS in cooperation with federal agencies to conduct visual and other inspections on person, baggage, cargo, and other articles for direct movement to the state of Hawaii. The HR 776, the Nutria Eradication and Control Reauthorization Act, introduced by Representative Josh Harbor from California, extends the 2003 law, and this bill has already passed out of the House. So this has a real good chance of being finalized in this current 119th Congress. And then an interesting one, the Basin Fund Preservation Act. Senator Lee from Utah. This addresses the loss of hydropower generation due to pulses of cold water from Glen Canyon Dam to control smallmouth bass. So this is mostly a Republican bill. They were concerned that by doing this invasive species management action of flushing cold water to disrupt smallmouth bass, we were losing power generation. So a little bit different. We'll see what happens if this thing makes it through. And on the House side, Representative Harriet Hagman is leading the charge on this bill over in the House. So what's going to happen in this Congress? We hope to see the State Boating Act, S4113 from the last Congress, reintroduced. It's a bipartisan bill. It's got Shaheen, Crapo, and Risch. So that's a good bipartisan group of senators. And this bill would reinstate the state's authority to collect fees, which the Coast Guard has threatened to block. This we talked about last year, and do believe that we should see this reintroduced, and there's a good amount of support for this bill, including Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission, State of Washington, AFWA, PENWAR, National Marine Manufacturers Association. So a lot of interest so that states can collect the fees that they have usually done. And then last November, same senators, Shaheen, Crapo, and Rich, sent a letter to the Coast Guard asking them to allow states to collect those fees. So now we're waiting to see when this bill will be reintroduced, or will the pressure that's been put on the Coast Guard cause them to drop the fee ban? So we're waiting on that one, but expect action. We will see, most likely, because we have every 2 years now for the last 10 years, seen the Water Resources Development Act legislated on in 2026. So we'll see that probably next year. And then appropriations, probably not going to be some good news here. They're going to start marking up fiscal bills, the committees will, in late April of this year. And yes, expect cuts. How those cuts will impact invasive species is unknown. Typically, we've done okay, but this Congress is different, as you know. So we'll wait and see what kind of numbers the appropriation committees come up with. Our website is westernas.org. If you're interested in the AS newsletter, all of the legislation I discussed earlier is in that newsletter. Robin Drawheim being the editor. Email me at my email address there, and we can add you to AIS News. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Really appreciate that. Yeah, if you have any questions or follow-ups for Stephen, please put them in the chat, and we'll get those as we roll through here. Appreciate it, Stephen. Next up is Susan Pascoe to provide a federal AIS program forecast. Susan Pascoe is the Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force Executive Secretary. Susan, are you out there?
I am. However, I do not currently have the ability to share my screen. Are we able to?
Yep. I can get you in here in just a second, Susan. I guess to find you in the master list here.
Oh, there it is. Great. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, hopefully this works. Okay, are you able to see the presentation?
It was there for a moment and then it disappeared.
Oh no.
Yeah, it showed
Okay,
the,
one more time. Hang on. I'm
yeah, try
sorry.
one more time.
Yes.
I can see it. It's just not in present mode.
Okay, I can change that. All right, how about now?
Yes, looks good.
Excellent. All right. Sounds like there might be a little bit of a delay, so just let me know if my slides aren't moving. But thank you once again for the opportunity to give an overview on the Aquatic Nuisance Species Task Force. Trying to give you, go through this very quickly to make sure that Barack has plenty of time to present on QZAP. So just very briefly, if you're not familiar with the task force, just a reminder that this is the national task force that was established with the passage of the Non-Indigenous Aquatic Nuisance Control Act of 1990. We do have the mission to develop and implement a program with the United States to prevent the introduction and dispersal of aquatic nuisance species, to monitor, control, and study these species, and to disseminate related information. So of course, because of that large mission that we do have under the Act, we do have quite a few working components of the task force. So this is just our visual diagram to see how that all fits together. In the green box there are our voting members. We do have a blend of federal as well as ex officio members. Of course, our 6 regional panels in orange, and all the subcommittees and their related working groups down below in the blue and purple. Come on, you can advance. Okay. So the task force does meet twice a year. And each one of our meetings do generate a number of decisional items as well as action items. Our last meeting was held back in November of 2024. We did vote on 3 different items during that meeting. The first one was to approve the Delaware State ANS Management Plan. So that one is now eligible for funding through the grant program that is operated through the Fish and Wildlife Service. And proud to say that is the 47th state or interstate plan that the task force has approved since its establishment. The other item that we voted on was to approve the New Zealand Mudsdale Management Plan to be posted in the Federal Register for public comment. That is the final stage for public comment before the task force can officially approve that plan. So right now that Federal Register notice has been submitted to the department. So as soon as we get it cleared, it will be posted for 60 days, and those comments will be sent back to the working group to address and come back to the task force with their final revision. And the last voting item was to approve the recommendations that came from the Joint Invasive Species Advisory Committee and ANSTS task force members, in which they were asked to provide input into the implementation of the Early Detection Rapid Response Work Group. They came back with a number of recommendations. The task force did conditionally approve them, pending one last period of review to incorporate any additional comments from task force members. Some of our highlighted action items for the November meeting. The first one is for the Early Detection Rapid Response Subcommittee to distribute their rapid response template. So hopefully everyone had an opportunity to take a look at that and for any comments. Those comments have been incorporated into a new revision and will be up for approval at our next meeting in May. We also are continuing to work on the Mossball After Action report. The summary is near complete and should be ready for the task force to review and approve at our May meeting as well. The next one in here is to host a regional panel principal meeting to discuss panel recommendations on multi-state coordination as well as potential steps for the rough management plan. So we did have a regional panel principal meeting recently. If you're not familiar for those are just an opportunity for the panel chairs and coordinators, all 6 panels to come together to discuss shared priorities and look for areas that we can work together. And last but not least, we had the control subcommittee. They did distribute their combined plan decision-making guidance to the task force. Once again, that one was sent out for review. Those comments were incorporated, and we will have a final draft to consider at our upcoming meeting. Just a quick reminder that the task force does have our strategic plan, which forms our blueprint. We do have a number of 6 goals that have 3 objectives each, and the activities within each one of those objectives is what does form the work plans of our committee. So rather than go through each committee's work plan, I just wanted to give some updates on some of the high-level activities that may be new since the last time that I did give an update. So the first one is from our outreach subcommittee. They did hold a national outreach workshop in coordination with the NASMA meeting in October in order to discuss some of the recommendations that came out of the national assessment of AIS outreach campaigns. They have completed a draft report as a product from that workshop, which does include a number of recommendations. So that will be presented to the task force at the upcoming meeting and will hopefully be used to implement their future work plan. In addition to that, the Outreach Committee also continues to manage the Stop Aquatic Hitchhikers website and produce an outreach community of practice. Another one that is coming as a joint effort of the Early Detection and Rapid Response Committee and the Research Subcommittee is to modernize and expand the invasive species database. So that database is currently being housed on SIREN, which is the Early Detection Rapid Response Informational System that is run from U.S. Geological Survey. If you remember, we did do a soft launch last year just to kind of work out some of the kinks that were occurring with translating the data from the survey into the database. Once we were finished with that soft launch, we did a wide net of that survey to get additional names. And currently we received over 200 responses of individuals to be added to this database. So we are currently in the process of adding those names. And then once that is done, we'll continue to accept new names and submissions on a rolling basis. So if you have not yet seen that survey and are interested and want to be included in the database, feel free to reach out and I'll get that information to you. A couple of other ongoing initiatives here is we do consider to have our working group that is led by the U.S. Coast Guard as well as the EPA to develop a framework for aquatic nuisance species introductions that may result from ballast water discharge. That framework was a requirement in the recent VETA Act. Another working group is focusing on invasive coral. This is a joint initiative from both the task force as well as the U.S. Coral Reef Task Force that are coming together to work on some mitigation strategies to discuss both stony tissue coral loss disease as well as some of the new introductions of aquacoral that have been detected in the Caribbean as well as the Pacific waters. Some of the things you may hear at our up next meeting is we also are considering how to develop a process to better support and track the existing species plans. We're also looking to update the National AIS Research Priority List this year. We do have a draft MOU that is between the Pet Advisory Network, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, NOAA, to come together to revitalize the Habitattitude campaign, which targets pet owners, asking them to be responsible and not release organisms out into the environment. So that MOU is currently being cleared by the department, so we hope to make an announcement of that fairly soon. And last but not least, our strategic plan for the task force does expire this year in 2025. So we are hoping to begin a strategic planning process in order to review our priorities and develop our new plan for the next 5 years. Originally, I was hoping to have that conversation at our upcoming meeting in May. However, because we did have to change the format from in-person to a virtual meeting, we decided that maybe the timing wasn't quite right. So we do want to look at what our format would be for the fall meeting once we have better certainty on who can travel. And so we'll be looking to make accommodations, whether it be virtual or in person, depending on the situation in this fall. Sorry, I don't know. There it goes. Okay. All right. So that is my task force update. But Leah also asked me just to kind of mention the ongoing efforts with the rough control program and the requests that accompany that program to the regional panels. So if you've not heard about this yet, we did have a discussion at our last meeting in November regarding this plan. Overall, the control subcommittee, they did do an audit of all the species control plans in order to make a recommendation on which one could remain an active plan, which one are in need of an update, and which ones really are not being used actively that could be potentially be archived. So the rough control program is one of the plans that was recommended for archival because there was no evidence that anyone was actively using this work to guide their efforts. This was one of the early plans from the task force. It was submitted to the task force and approved in November of 1996. However, because this is the first time that we have ever considered archiving a plan, we did develop a process for the proper way to do that, in which we did ask 2 leads on the rough control program to conduct a review. Those leads were from the Fish and Wildlife Service, Mike Rusinski and Rick Frohneyer. They began reaching out to numerous agencies as well as regional panels and committees within the Great Lakes region. I believe they got input from 33 different entities in order to assess if this was indeed no longer an active plan. They did develop all their information they compiled into a report. That report was presented and reviewed by the Great Lakes panel, and then they came back with a number of recommendations, which I'll cover on the next slide. But overall, the final report did recommend an archival of this plan for the reasons that are listed here. Within the review, they did find out that agencies were not utilizing the program to guide specific work. There was no current funding attached to this plan or the program. They reviewed all the objectives and found sufficient evidence that all the objectives within the plan have been addressed. And last but not least, since 1996, laws, initiatives, regulative surveillance, and education do seem to be all in place. So in light of the information, that report does recommend, again, archival of the plan. But in addition to that, they also do recommend that we continue to monitor rough in the Great Lakes to make sure that it does not expand. Also, they can recommend to continue to engage on rough and established forums, including the regional panels, the Great Lakes Fishery Commission, and others. And also for each jurisdiction, is encouraged to manage and research rough as their resources allowed. So those recommendations, once again, were presented to the Great Lakes panel. However, when the panel went to vote on these recommendations, they did not come to a consensus. There seemed to be quite some that were still in favor of not archiving it, but simply to update the plan instead. And so there was a comment that was made at the task force meeting during this discussion that perhaps this should not just be a Great Lakes panel decision. We did want to give other regional panels the opportunity to provide their input before a final decision on this plan is made. And so after the November meeting, we did send out both the presentation, the notes, as well as the final report for the regional panels to consider. So I'm currently working with the panelists to get your input so that we can come back to the task force in May with some more information to help guide this decision. So with that, I think I'm going to stop there and just, if we have time for any questions, if you need any other clarification on the input that we are seeking in regards to the rough plan.
Thank you, Susan. I really appreciate that. Leah, we're really ahead of schedule. Do we want to open up for questions? What kind of, I guess we didn't really discuss the format, but if people do have questions, raise your hand. And at the end, we can also ask questions of previous presenters as well.
Absolutely. And if specific to the desire to have feedback on archiving the rough plan, if you want more information, if this is of concern or interest to you, please let me know and we can get more information to you. But I think, you know, comprehensively, the work has been done to make sure that archiving is maybe the best route forward, but this is your opportunity to weigh in.
Yes. So just to be clear, one thing I did not mention is archival does not mean it goes away. It just does mean we're no longer going to be actively tracking it or really promoting it as a product of the task force. However, if we do find that rough does begin to expand their range and there is a need to revise it, that will always be an available option. And I know, given the current range of rough. It is very possible this is just simply not a Western Regional Panel priority. So it's completely acceptable for the Western Regional Panel to say, given that we are happy to defer to the opinions of the other regional panels.
Thank you, Susan, and I really appreciate you working with the ANSTF and the panels. It's a lot of work kind of herding the cats to get everybody pointed in the same direction, so it's appreciated. Next up, Barak Shamai. He's going to, with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, he's going to give us a rundown on the status of QZAP.
Thanks, Tom. Good afternoon, everybody. I wish I had more information for you guys, but I do have some minor updates related to grants in general, as well as the state ANS management plan grants and QZAP. So in the name of bureaucracy, the service has decided to take on an additional step for review of all grants over $50,000. And this is going to apply to all of our grants, all of our NOFOs, all the RFPs that go out. So starting with the state ANS management plan grants, those are, as the state folks know, are broken up into sort of phase 1 and phase 2. The phase 1 process is when we announce the RFP. That is, I don't have an exact date for that, but it is coming soon. And it is estimated that each plan will be receiving $86,900. And again, because those are over $50,000, there will be an Fish and Wildlife Service Director review as well as a DOI review. So our expectation will be that these grants will likely take an additional 2 to 6 weeks, possibly. And don't hold me to it. It could be longer. But that's kind of what we're looking at this point. So that is coming soon. We've gotten the confirmation that those are going to be funded, and that first phase 1 notice of funding opportunity will be announced, and each of the state coordinators will be notified as we've done in the past. Now, with regard to QZAP, we are still kind of in the waiting game. We haven't had funds allocated to our region for that program yet. The expectation is with the continuing resolution that we will be receiving equal or close to equal amount that we have in years past. But again, that could change. So the hope is that there will be $2.2 million available for QZAP for the QZAP action plan. And something that we're also trying to do is make available of that $2.2 million, $500,000 for golden mussel work. I'm still waiting to get sort of the final approval on that. So essentially what that would look like is of the 2.2 million, 500,000 would potentially be available for golden mussel projects. So not just quagga zebra, but again, those projects would be evaluated on their merit as all the projects are sort of put into the pot. So it's not a guarantee that 500K would go towards golden mussel work. But the hope is that there is enough need out there that we would be able to look at those projects and get the high priority ones on the ground. So those are the kind of the two RFP NOFO pieces for QZAP and the state plan grants. The only other real update that I have is in relation to hazard analysis and critical control point training. That's HACCP. We do still have funding for that, and Teresa Thome out of our Region 1 is still kind of leading that charge. And her and I will be leading a class coming up in April in Colorado for Robert and his state folks. And I think there are available spaces. So if folks are interested in attending that class, please reach out. And if you guys have needs for additional classes, please reach out to Teresa or myself. We'd like to get those scheduled for the year as soon as possible. And that is my overview for today. Sorry, I wish I had some more definitive answers as to when these things are going to be coming down the pipeline.
Thank you, Brock. Great news on the
Sure.
state plan money still coming through, and appreciate
Yes. Yeah.
that was a
Yeah.
concern for states for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we're in the dark on so many things at this point. We're just kind of doing our best to keep up and continue these strengthening our partnerships. We just, my hope is that these partnerships stay strong while we work out the kinks, so to speak.
Appreciate your pushing on all that. Any questions? Please raise your hand. Okay, appreciate it, Brock.
Yep, good to see everybody.
Next up, Martha Volkoff from California Fish and Wildlife. She's going to be giving us an update on golden mussels in California. And Martha, we are way ahead of schedule, so please slow roll it and give us details, because I think we're all concerned and interested in what you're seeing out there.
Thank you. Well, I don't know that I have that much content, but I'm happy to answer questions to fill up some time. So first off, I want to thank everyone for your contributions, be it tangibly or in terms of leveraging and support and compassion as we navigate through this challenging situation in California. We're in not a great fiscal situation at the moment in California ourselves, and we are dealing with this with our existing resources across state agencies and with our federal partners. And we're working very much from our existing quagga zebra mussel program, which is made up of many dedicated staff throughout California, both state and federal, working within that context. So in many respects, we're well prepared to deal with this. It could be much worse. But nonetheless, we're doing really well with who we have, what we have, and the amount of commitment we have. And so first off, I've asked Leah to share our real-time map of golden mussel detections in California. This map is on our website. It's interactive. You can get in and see the details. In this layer that's up is only the detections. There is also a layer that you can add to see where we've conducted surveys and had no detects, to sort of fill out the picture of the reality. So I encourage you to go visit that website if you're interested in detailed information about the population in the Delta and also in the water conveyance system, which there's a couple of red dots on the map below that cluster. And that brings me to giving you a little bit of context. If you're not familiar with California water management and conveyance systems, this Delta location of the detection is the source or water that is sent down to Southern California, originates in this Delta vicinity and enters pumping plants that are pumped southward. And in addition, this Delta water system is highly interconnected with the tributaries into the Central Valley, both from the San Joaquin Valley in the south and the Sacramento Valley in the north. So the interconnectedness of this water system, the Delta, not only in terms of navigable waters, but in water conveyance systems, is tremendous. It's a large footprint over the geography of California, making this a very challenging containment situation. So that's just a little bit of context. We have, and in addition, layered on top of that, the water is passed off to many other state agencies, federal agencies, and local water agencies. And along with that water is the authority to manage the water and many reservoirs associated with storage and conveyance systems themselves. And in California, those local or water managers, not always local, have the authority and responsibility for managing access to those waters, and containment of quagga and zebra mussels, as well as protection and prevention efforts at those water bodies. So currently, in terms of laws, the only existing law governing golden mussel is the addition to our restricted species list that prohibits possession and movement of golden mussels. We do not have statutory authority for golden mussels as we do for quagga and zebra mussels, because our legislation was created specifying dry-scented mussels, quagga and zebra mussels, and does not include golden mussels. So there's a difference in our management at this moment in the absence of legislative authority, as well as specific additional funding for this response. We do know that many of these, well, not many, some of these waters managed by other agencies are closing, which is creating considerable concern about access for boating and fishing, something that we're just on the brink of for the boating season this year. We are working to support those water managers in implementing prevention programs, as well as trying to coordinate across mussel prevention programs to facilitate boating access. Since the detection of, our department has been leading the response and implementing monitoring just in the fall and into the winter of last year to delineate the presence of golden mussels in the Delta, as well as all the outlying areas as best we could at that late time in the monitoring season. It really was pushing out our mussel monitoring that is atypical for, at least in Northern California. There is quagga zebra mussel monitoring going year-round in Southern California. But up in this region of the state, this was really pushing out that monitoring. Primarily, we've been relying on adult monitoring in the Delta, but also veliger monitoring and eDNA monitoring has complemented the adult surveys. And working on outreach and education to boating and the public generally in the Delta and beyond, and engagement with those partner agencies that water manage or that manage water or access to water. And that has all been under the leadership of a steering committee or a task force, pardon me, a golden mussel task force, which is a combination of state agencies consisting of Department of Fish and Wildlife, State Lands Commission, and Chris here participates on behalf, Chris Chiani participates on behalf of State Lands Commission, our Department of Water Resources, which runs one of the state water projects that their authority is around water supply, as well as our State Water Resources Control Board, which it has authority over water quality. Our State Parks Division of Boating and Waterways, State Parks manages access to several water bodies throughout the state, and Division of Boating and Waterways manages the quagga mussel prevention fee and associated grant program, as well as Department of Food and Agriculture, which is obviously very closely affected by the water conveyance. And then our federal partners on the task force are the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. So under that task force, we have developed a golden mussel response framework document that is very nearing completion, and it is a document of recommendations rather than an implementation or action plan at this point in our response, that will function as a tool to help identify what our needs are in the state and identify opportunities for filling those needs. We anticipate that that document will be released in early April and will be publicly posted on our website and available there. We will also send out a notification by way of our email list. So if you're interested in receiving that directly, feel free to subscribe to our email list on our website. I see a hand up. Should I pause and take a question?
I think it might be your hand, which is funny. But maybe someone has their hand up.
All right. Well, it prompted me to pause. Okay. Let's see. So the framework, we've got that. We recognize in many conversations throughout the West and ourselves dealing with our agencies and partners who implement prevention, there are many really time-sensitive and compelling research needs associated with managing mussels and prevention of the overland spread of mussels. And so our framework has identified some of the most pressing management-related questions, and those include exposure time to hot water of adult and larvae that is tied to our conventional watercraft decontamination efficacy, exposure time to drying for adults, which will indicate their potential for overland survival and spread on trailered watercraft or equipment, and lethal exposure in temperature and duration in standing water of adult and larval mussels. Again, another question relative to the potential for overland transport. So those three we are looking at tackling this spring in terms of replicating what we know to be, or using our baseline of what is known and testing golden mussels, specifically adults and veligers, against what our practices are for quagga and zebra mussels, to validate that the measures we are using for quagga and zebra mussels are effective for golden mussels as well. And in addition, there is one other group interested in moving forward with saline immersion of adult and veliger golden mussels, because the proximity to the saline environment in the delta, that may be one tool that we might use as a sort of in situ decontamination option as well. And also some work on growth rates of golden mussels. Okay, and then future needs, as I mentioned, we're short on capacity and funding and authority. So I anticipate in the near future, or in the future, I'm hopeful that we will make some progress on that. And one interim opportunity that we've identified is by way of our Sport Fish Restoration Act boater access funds, is funding prevention and passing through by way of a grant. And of course, that's barring any unforeseen federal funding uncertainty. But we're optimistic that we'll be able to announce that in the near future and try to support some of those local efforts that we recognize struggle with the ability to implement prevention on this urgency. All right, that's what I think I have prepared for you. Any questions? Heidi?
Hey, Martha, thank you for the update. I have two questions. I guess one, it potentially may be a little deep, but with the executive order, the emergency measures to provide water resources in California that basically directed reclamation and other agencies to move water for emergencies. But I flagged this under one of our executive order trackers as a potential issue for movement of these and other invasive species to potentially be a problem. Has this come up at all in any of the talks so far about how this is going to be managed?
Not that I'm aware of. Certainly in emergency situations, we recognize, the importance of emergencies. So we have never taken a really strong regulatory hammer relative to golden mussels. We have our existing authorities. I'm sorry, did I say golden mussels? I meant quagga zebra mussels. And if that's any sort of window into the future, I don't anticipate that being a barrier, and I'm not aware of any direct conversations about that, but happy to have a follow-up conversation about that.
Yes. And my second part was the subsequent finding of the axe-head mussel in Southern California related to checking for golden mussels. Has there been any additional follow-up or information coming up on that one?
We did do some additional surveys and found them in, and I believe this may be on USGS by now, another population outside of our initial detection, which I take to mean they're established in that vicinity, because I do recall being asked, do we have plans on a rapid response or an attempt to eradicate? And my answer at that point was, I don't know enough to know whether that would, if it is an isolated the one isolated population, the first detection. We are considering adding that to the restricted species as well. And in terms of if there would be future changes in legislation, what I think this calls out to my agency recognizes, and so I'll say it explicitly, the species by species approach to managing invasive species, and that I know other states have a more flexible route to adding new species to their authorities. In California, it's currently, at least in the world of invasive mussels, through the legislative process. And so in terms of thinking about in your context, consider the implications for that level. And if you have a more nimble system, great. I am trying to make the case that that would be helpful for invasive species collectively in California.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Dennis has his hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Martha. Appreciate all that you're doing. Keep us informed on all of this. I know you're busy, all of you and your staff, so thank you. Just a comment on the decontamination kind of verification. Kevin Netcher with NDOW reached out to Dr. Sudeep Chandra at University of Nevada, Reno, who's agreed to help do that confirmation. We just need to find some funding. And in conversations at XCOM regarding the Rapid Response Fund, I think we've stated that perhaps research might not be the best activity for that funding, but Barack, I think you had said that QZAP could fund some golden mussel activities, and so I believe we'll be looking to QZAP to help fund that effort.
Okay, thank you. We have also in our Oh, I didn't mention in the task force has several work groups. One of those work groups is we call partners, and it is inclusive of water managers and researchers and academia, and it is a diverse group, but they have been compiling a list of research needs. So the ones I rattled off are those ones that are directly related to watercraft management, and from my perspective, on a prevention perspective, the most time sensitive, the most immediate needs. I mean, they're all immediately needed, but if I have to pick and choose, those are my tops. They are also compiling a list of other research needs as well. And in some conversations with Western states, I wondered if our QZAP document and the future of the QZAP or the WRP might be a place that is more accessible and nimble in managing a list of research needs. Might want to take that under the wing of WRP, either in conjunction or isolation, just so it doesn't, because this is a West End national significance. I would prefer to, if we could elevate it to a broader audience for assistance or interest in implementation. So something I sort of throw out there for the WRP XCOM consideration and discussion into the future.
Sounds like a great idea, Martha. Other questions from the panel? So Martha, those research ideas that you rattled off, is there funding associated with any of those?
No, I would be tapping into our existing staff to prioritize those.
And another question for me. So we spoke about a month ago. At the time, the agriculture community wasn't really paying attention to this issue. Has that changed at all at this point?
Not appreciably, no. I think there's certainly interest, but not huge engagement.
Okay. Most of our lettuce comes from out there, right? And fruit and nuts and all the California stuff.
Yes. Yeah. I'm concerned come spring in the Delta for water conveyances, and there's a lot of riparian water pumping to support Delta agriculture. So we shall see, I guess.
Okay, any other questions? Hang in there, Martha. Really appreciate you fighting the good fight down there.
Thank you. And for anyone else, feel free to reach out to me directly. Happy to take your calls. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Okay, next up on the agenda is early detection rapid response funding. So late last year, Susan Pascoe with Fish and Wildlife Service reached out to the executive committee at WRP and offered the opportunity to take over rapid response funds for the panel to take forward, in particular in response to the golden mussel detection in California, but also just as a resource to help early detection rapid response efforts in Western states. And Pacific States Marine Fisheries was well set up to distribute funding. We have a process for the Fish and Wildlife Service has an established process for evaluating proposals like this. So we had everything we needed to move forward, and the executive committee agreed to take that on. We haven't been communicated as much as we should have with the panel on this issue, because then the funds were on hold and we figured that wouldn't come through. But the most recent communication has pointed to that funding still being a resource that we can move forward and get on the ground this season. And I'll pass it over to Leah to take it from there.
Yeah, so just to supplement this information from Tom, so the executive committee has been working diligently to put together request for proposal guidelines for this, and an appropriate merit review process. All that information is nearly finalized, and we're anticipating mid-April that would be released out. You'd see that. Could somebody, I can hear someone that's not muted. That's using a microwave. If you're not muted, please do so. Thank you. Okay, so we're anticipating mid-April that RFP would go out. So that will be hosted on Pacific States Marine Fishery Commission website, because they will be, actually managing the dollars. But that you'll see that through the listserv. That should be going out to everybody. You can see that. So, and then with these funds, the XCOM thought it was most appropriate to use a pre-proposal process to help kind of refine and make sure it was very clear what these funds were most appropriately used for in a rapid response situation. So there will be a pre-proposal, and then kind of that invited full proposal process built into this. And then also I wanted to mention, there will be, of course, full description of all these details in the RFP, but in terms of general eligibility, in terms of like the who and those who's eligible and what activities are eligible, but I just broadly want to mention that these funds would be focused, for Western United States, for both fresh water and marine water, and then recipients would be, state government, tribal government, and then interstate organizations. So there will be, full details in all of that information coming in a couple of weeks. But this is a really exciting opportunity for, having funds available for, speedy response. So this is welcomed. But yeah, I guess that's all I wanted to add to Tom's. Let me see if there's any questions. Stephen, did you want to add anything at this related to that?
Yeah, we just have to get the document through our fiscal department, and we'll get it posted as soon as we can.
Great. Any questions?
Questions? So Leah, the intent of the pre-proposal was having a very streamlined, short, it's something you didn't have to put a whole lot of effort into, but just get the ideas out there for evaluation.
I think that was the intent. Yeah.
Other questions? A great resource to help us out, I think, moving forward. Next on the agenda is ANS Task Force recommendations. So every ANS Task Force meeting, the panels get together and provide recommendations if there's issues that the panel believes need to be addressed at the national level. One recommendation that WRP as well as other panels have put forward repeatedly over recent years is to increase panel funding moving forward. At this point, through XCOM or through the executive committee, we're discussing recommendations, and we really didn't come up with anything apart from continuing our state plan funding. And it's great to hear that that's still coming through, but also, don't forget about it. It's something that's very valuable. And then also maintaining or increasing panel funding moving forward. Just because the business, what we have to do as a panel to meet the requirements of the ANS task force has increased, as well as costs of doing business. And additional funding would be very valuable to help us continue those efforts moving forward. But this is an opportunity to kind of reach out to membership of the panel for ideas, and please raise your hand if you have any, for things that we can take forward to the ANS task force as recommendations for the upcoming May meeting. You can always contact us offline too if you're interested. Please shoot us an email. Myself, Leah, Stephen, other XCOM members. It is a great opportunity to get our concerns up in front of the task force. You know, it's a strange time right now, but that does not mean that we need to back off on being vocal on our concerns and questions. Yes, Karen, I saw you raise your hand.
All right, I had to figure out where to unmute myself on this program. Anyway, I've seen a little chatter on the side about, helping Martha. I just had the same thought of with golden mussels. Is there anything that Martha or anyone else can think of that we could recommend to the task force that would help California or the West deal with the golden mussel? I don't have an exact idea, but just wanted to put that out there.
Absolutely. Martha, would you be interested in commenting on that? Are there any needs that you see?
Federal agencies, well, I would be interested in, we don't have engagement from all of our federal partners. I don't know that we've asked them all and invited them to the table. But notably, Corps of Engineers, I think I would like to engage. Bureau of Reclamation is engaged. I think the reality is, you said weird. I think even within those agencies, it's an awkward time. But I might say a unilateral call without calling anyone else out. I don't know if Susan's here. Susan did invite me to the next upcoming task force meeting for a discussion, more than just a presentation out. I think there are plans at the task force to discuss golden mussels upcoming. I don't know the details or the level of detail that discussion will include. I don't know if Susan knows at this point, but feel free to chime in, Susan.
No, thanks, Martha. Well, one, just golden mussel is obviously a topic of interest, not for the Western Regional Panel, but across the nation there is concern given the potential for spread and establishment. So I definitely want to make sure the issue stays on the radar of the task force and all the panel's members do have the updated information. But I am also hearing some suggestion that perhaps the task force, our role could be to develop a national preparedness plan. So all regions are being vigilant and have the tools and the resources to respond should additional detections be made. So I'm kind of thinking that is where the task force discussion might head. So it would be interesting to hear the Western Regional Panel if you would support something more on a national scale rather than just focusing on the state or the region.
Thank you, Susan. Other ideas or suggestions on recommendations, golden mussel related or other, to consider for putting forward to the XCOM?
And I'm really grateful for the groundwork they've done up to this point in terms of the Lacey Act listing, and also preceding that the I probably won't get the terms right, but the categorical exclusion for AIS work across DOI departments. I think that is really significant, and I didn't know that was in the works. So I think that is really important to also this reality of golden mussels today, as well as all other invasive species management issues.
Absolutely. That CADX work is really valuable and appreciate that being pushed through. Anything else related to recommendations or golden mussels? Anything we want to roll back to related to committee reports, Stephen's update on federal action, funding, things like that? There is a lot going on right now, and we do have time. Any questions or comments? Sarah, please.
I did hear back from Elizabeth here quick, and she will be recording the social media webinar. So just as an update from chat in the chat box.
Excellent. Thank you for following up with that, Sarah. Martha.
Leah gave us and Vanessa gave us a sort of preview for the annual meeting. I'm curious, there were no details about the joint component with the Mississippi River Basin. Do you have any more to share on how or what that's going to look like?
Well, right now, joint right now means that we have a very large planning team that consists of participants from both panels, just so we can capture both of the, the topics of interest. We have, and in terms of some of those topics, we have talked about leveraging and learning from each other, because we know that each of the panels kind of have different ways of doing things and strengths. Actually, maybe drilling down even further, like even the states within each of the panels kind of have some strengths and weaknesses, and building on some of that. When I mentioned the business meeting earlier, I know I don't know what that's going to look like, but we have determined that it would be like a joint business meeting, which maybe sounds clunky, but I think, again, we're trying to look at ways of doing that differently, because in the past, I know some folks don't, it can be kind of a drier portion of the meeting versus, the presentations and discussions. So, we're just trying to look at different ways of doing that business portion, but it would be combined. But other than that, I don't know if we would see any distinct differences. I think actually funny what came up when we just met this week, and when we were talking about the field trip, I think for many of us in the West, it's like exciting to think about getting into a boat and having, carp come up, whereas lots of folks that are in the Mississippi Basin are like, yeah, we've seen that. So I think there's going to be a little bit of sharing both ways. So okay. Oh, and I see Justin is asking about bylaw. Do the bylaws need to be updated for a joint business meeting? So, yeah, and I guess looping back to John of the membership committee mentioned that we're going to be updating the bylaws. It happens on a 4-year rotation. So, but that process, we kind of front load that as much as we can. You guys are going to be seeing emails and draft versions. It'll have review periods, and then the goal would be to adopt that at the meeting. So there wouldn't be a ton of deliberation on things unless we needed to in person. But I think the front end of it is meant to kind of deal with bylaw update conversation.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully everyone will have had a chance to review and need to comment on it beforehand, and we'll be ready to kind of just take a vote on that.
Yes. Yeah, that would be the goal. So hopefully that answers your question, Martha, about what to anticipate.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I also see a comment in the chat about eDNA and specifically to golden mussel. So yes, we have been as part of the monitoring subgroup, sorry, all these names for groups and subsets of our response, has worked on developing eDNA protocols. Federal partners have also been participating in that effort. I can't say off the top of my head if there are private companies that are up to implementation at this moment, but I would anticipate they will be in the near future. So yes, we are doing eDNA and are happy to share what we know with anyone that's interested in implementing that. You can reach out to me directly and I can connect you to the right folks to have that conversation with, which wouldn't be me. I'm not my expertise. Thanks, Lena, for the question.
I was just going to say too, we've had a number of folks that presented, whether committee chairs and Martha and Susan and Brock, that said, if you have questions, you can contact them directly. If for some reason you do not have their email, just email me. I will get you in touch with folks if you can't figure out how to contact somebody.
And I'll drop mine in the chat too right now. I'm sure you can Google me too and find my house address, but don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
And Justin said his lab in Washington can analyze samples from golden mussels. Thanks, Justin. Other questions? Comments? Follow-up from previous speakers? Concerns about another field season? Commiseration about management, and we don't want to get too far in the weeds as far as that goes. But and Heidi says Reclamation is also working on eDNA for golden mussels with our great friends in the Denver lab.
This could be another opportunity for WRP support, is to maintain a list of laboratories. While we in California have some capacity, we're not in a position to provide as a service provider at this point or in the near future. I don't know that Justin and Reclamation are necessarily, and that's where I see the private sector support. But that would be helpful to California and the West and nationally, is if there was kind of a clearinghouse for that sort of information. I'll put it out there because I get that question often. Who can we send samples to? And I don't have a good answer, nor can I maintain a list and track all of that. So I welcome some help there.
That's a great point, Martha. Is that something we can do, put out through the panel, just checking in on labs that have the capacity to do that, Leah?
Just for golden. So what I was going to add was that, Stephen, Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission, has historically housed lab processing information for dracinids, but it seems like there's a new column, potentially some new rows in that spreadsheet, right, Stephen? And I don't know, yeah, so I don't know if it could be a combination. And then actually, now I can't remember where it's housed. Isn't there a page about golden mussels on the new mussel response webpage that you're housing, Stephen?
Yeah, there is information there on golden mussels, and yes, we can look at maybe adding a field on golden mussel labs.
It seems wise.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll get with Robin.
And my recommendation is if you're analyzing samples for quagga zebra, to start analyzing them for golden mussel as well. Because we do have eDNA information to support that they have been in the Delta back to 2023. And I didn't mention this during my presentation, but there is no management of conveyances leaving the Delta at this point.
DWR had samples that went back in time. They retested them.
Correct. Thanks, Karen.
And another question for Martha. So we can expect the distribution of golden mussels to really expand moving forward. Anywhere that water's moving through the Central Valley and through that irrigation system, we would expect sometime in the near future to see evidence of mussels. Is that probably accurate?
Yes, that's what I anticipate. Up to the point that there is some treatment. So on the map that Leah was sharing, the most southern dot on the map is within that State Water Project canal system at a pumping plant, and that detection was in February. Adult mussels. Just below that, that pumping plant is at a bifurcation of the pipeline system. So keep going down a little further south than that. 2 dots. There you go. That is a pumping plant that pumps water into a coastal, not canal, pipeline, underground pipeline system. And a little bit below that one, oh, not those 2 dots, there's one more southern than that. There's a water treatment plant that is a right there in the center, that treats the water to such an extent that it should be adequate to remove villagers and prevent them from spreading downstream of that water treatment plant. So we are optimistic based on that information that that should preclude the downstream spread from that, or a little bit south of that dot specifically. And we're still working to understand where those places that may prevent the downstream spread exist in those water conveyance systems. But those managed closed water, if you will, systems aside, the waterways connected to the Delta are boatable in between. So, and then the movement of water in our Delta isn't always downstream, as you will, because of that water pumping plant. So water in the Delta environment sloshes back and forth to some extent, and then can be influenced by that significant pumping in the summer where water moves counter directional to downstream. And then incrementally, watercraft may be moving golden mussels outside of what we believe today to be the those cluster of red. But I think come spring into the summer, we will have additional detections. With confidence, I say that, I suppose.
Martha, that treatment plant at the southern point, is that chlorine? Is that how they're treating it down there?
Dominique was on the line. I know she sent that. Where was that? I could pull it up real quick and drop it in. Flocculation. I'm not a water treatment expert, but it was a multi-stage water treatment. It did include chlorination as perhaps the final step of the treatment process, if I'm not mistaken. But it was a multi-stage step. It wasn't to municipal use standards. I don't believe, what would be domestic use, but it was a significant treatment, not just a single step treatment.
Thank you, Martha. Other questions? Leah, do we want to open for public comment at this point?
Let's do it.
Public comment. Who's got something to say? Nick from Idaho, please.
Hey, Tom, hey, Leah, and the group. Thanks for gathering us up for the mid-year. Just because I know I'd be interested to a lot of folks in this team. Idaho was able to get our Section 18 approved through US EPA to utilize potash, muriate of potash or potassium chloride for a quagga mussel treatment on the mid-snake. The treatment plan was very specific to the standing pools, I guess, isolated or ephemeral ponds within Pillar Falls, Shoshone Falls, and Twin Falls. And so we were able to get that done. The target rate was 100 part per million for 15 days of hold time. And fortunately, that window of opportunity was still there before spring runoff, which should be here in a couple of weeks. We're seeing a really great strong snowpack throughout the state of Idaho. And a lot of that is in the upper snake, and of course all that's going to go downstream. So but yeah, that treatment's been wrapped up now, and just so everybody's aware that Section 18 was approved. And I know there's another group working a similar track, trying to get that product registered, so and recognized as a molesticide through US EPA. So if you have any questions on potash, just let me know.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate that. Other comments? Public comment? Who's got something to say? Are we good? Leah, are we good? Anything else we need to hit on?
I think we're good, unless speak now or forever hold your peace, at least until the annual meeting. Yep, I see no more. Martha's put details about the treatment in the chat. And Heidi, I see your comment about potash, so duly noted. Yep, please, I encourage you to submit abstracts if you think you have something. I know people have something good to share. So lessons learned, even those that failed, right? In that vein that we talked about the other day on our planning team, we want to hear about it. So.
Okay, well, appreciate all of you. Appreciate all that you do. Please lean on each other if you need help with anything or just to vent. There's a lot of things going on. Working with invasive species, they get you sometimes, and you can't take that personal. You just keep on trucking. So this is a great forum, a great group of people to bounce ideas off of and lean on as we go forward. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.